I'm on a mission to revolutionize the travel industry.
Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Katie, and for those of you who don't know me, I used to weigh 360 pounds, and I've lost 180 pounds and kept it off for years now. And on this channel, we will discuss weight loss, weight maintenance, nonsense I see online about body positivity and fat acceptance, my experiences with all of that, and, well, anything else I feel like talking about. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, and let's get into today's video. So before we get too deep into this video, obviously my voice is not what it should be, and as you can see, I am taped up to the heavens on both arms right now. And I know in my last video I talked quite a bit about my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it's almost like Beetlejuice. I said the name just enough times that it decided to pop up its head and go, "It's showtime." And now I'm in the middle of a big old flare-up. So I've got that going for me, which is nice, I suppose. And if you're a returning viewer, you'll definitely notice I'm not filming in my usual spot. It's quite warm out today, and I gotta say, that room that I normally film in, there's no air conditioning, can't open any windows, and I have just a little tiny desk fan in there, so it was not gonna cut it today. But that's all right. I have my Yoshis, I have my jerseys, I have my Pokey, and also stick around to the end for a bonus story time about my 5K I competed in last weekend. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So today I have a couple of TikToks from another new friend to the channel. I'm sure most of you will be familiar with her. She goes by the name J-Bay, and she has quite a bit to say on traveling while plus size. So I figure we can watch these TikToks together, and I'll give you my reaction along the way.
My ordeal at SeaTac Airport will shock you. This experience I'm about to share with you is yet another example of why employee sensitivity training, a demand outlined in the plus-size travel petition, is desperately needed. I'm a plus-size wheelchair user, and on a recent flight to the SeaTac Airport, I requested wheelchair assistance, as I always do. When it came time for me to deplane, I saw the employee who would be assisting me with my wheelchair waiting for me in the entry of the jet bridge. As I approached her and she realized she'd be assisting me and not one of the smaller passengers, she started to walk away with the wheelchair while making comments about my size.
Okay, so I've never been on an airplane, but I have been in and out of wheelchairs plenty of times in my life, especially the 10 years or so that I was dealing with my ankle injury and wasn't able to walk properly. I've definitely seen my fair share of wheelchairs. I've also assisted numerous individuals who use wheelchairs, so I'm no stranger to them, and the one thing I can tell you is it is not easy to push people in a wheelchair. It's just not. Especially a full-grown adult, it's a pretty arduous task. And the people that I was assisting were much more in line with my size, not her size. So I could only imagine trying to push somebody in a wheelchair her size, how difficult that could truly be. And potentially dangerous, not only for the person pushing it, but for the person in the chair as well. So I realized that might not have been what she wanted to hear. But I can fully understand why the flight attendant did not want to assist her in a wheelchair, because that could really injure that flight attendant. So my husband, he does home health care, and he has had the same client for roughly the last 16 years or so. And his client had a stroke over 30 years ago, and she's been in a wheelchair ever since. Due to the nature of her disability, she's not always able to use a power chair or a scooter. So there are many times my husband has to push her everywhere. And for many years, we took her everywhere. We took her to fairs, we took her to pumpkin patches, took her on hay rides, took her out to eat. Everywhere she wanted to go, we took her. And my husband would have to push her everywhere. And after 16 years of doing this, his back, his neck, his shoulders, his knees, they're wrecked. After all of those years of doing that repetitive motion. And my husband is still in pretty dang good shape. He used to work on the railroad and built track and drove spikes, so he's incredibly strong and has always been incredibly fit. So I can only imagine how difficult it would be for that flight attendant, someone who is not trained in nursing or in home health care, how difficult that would be for them to push someone her size in a wheelchair. But let's see what else she has to say.
Even when I told her I really needed the chair and needed her to let me sit down in it, she blatantly ignored me and kept walking. I was then forced to walk up one of the longest jet bridges I've encountered, and she didn't stop.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know I admit I've never been on a plane. But she's inside the plane there, right? not the jet bridge. I don't know, that strikes me as very odd. Why is everything else filmed, but not the part that she wants us to know about? I mean, it appears she's filmed everything else so far, and someone is filming her. So why didn't they film that crucial moment? If this was such a problem that she wants more sensitivity training and people to sign this petition for her, don't you think that that would be something crucial? So now that's got me questioning if that even happened, or if she's just using this as some way to promote this petition. Because really, gonna film every other part of this except the most crucial moment? That just doesn't make a lick of sense to me at all. Not a lick of sense. And believe me, I understand when you have someone else filming for you. I mean, I do all my own filming, editing, everything here. I do all this myself. But if I want my husband to take a picture or a video of something, I'm going to make sure he knows and be like, hey, can you pull your camera out and just make sure you get this? So, for example, last summer, we went to a minor league baseball game, and we love to go quite often during the season when we can. And we had bought our tickets a little bit in advance. And about a week beforehand, I found out my absolute favorite player in the big leagues, Josh Naylor, was going to be down on a rehab assignment down in Akron. And we had tickets 2 rows behind the dugout. So I instantly formulated my plan. I knew I was going to make a sign. I was going to wear my jersey. We were going to try to show up as early as we could. And I knew at some point at the end of the inning, when he was coming back from first base, he was going to be running towards the dugout. And I was going to try to stand up and hold my sign and get his attention so he could read my sign. And I'd let my husband know ahead of time, like, hey, I'm about to do this. Make sure you have your camera ready. So that way I could hold up my sign, I could act a fool, I could get his attention. And I did, and it was amazing, and we got that moment on camera. The only thing I probably should have double checked was making sure that my husband had his video settings right, so as you can tell. So the quality of the video, meh, but it totally happened. I have proof, and for like a split second in my life, Josh Naylor knew that I existed in the universe and had a crazy sign. And yes, that is the sign right there. And no, I will not elaborate any further. Okay, well, twist my arm. Let me know down in the comments below if you'd like to know what that means, and I will explain it. So that all being said, I wanted to make sure that a crucial moment was filmed. She had somebody here filming this with her, and she didn't have the crucial moment filmed. I'm just not buying it. But I don't know. Let's see. Maybe we'll get to it. Let's see.
By the time she let me reach the wheelchair and sit down, my lips were white. My oxygen levels had dropped and I almost fainted. This was my first time flying without oxygen. This woman just assumed I could.
Okay, this was her first time flying without oxygen. Okay, to my knowledge, she is in her mid-20s. And in your mid-20s, if you're needing oxygen to fly, and at least the brief scan I did on her TikTok account, it doesn't appear she's traveling for work. It looks like she's traveling for pleasure and leisure. That sounds like that should be a wake-up call. I don't know, maybe to me that just sounds like it should be a wake-up call. That if she has to fly with oxygen in her mid-20s, maybe she's got bigger fish to fry than worrying about traveling so much. I don't know, that's just me. That would have been a big wake-up call to me. It was a big wake-up call when I was having trouble fitting behind the steering wheel in my own car. So I know that we all have our different thresholds of what will and won't be a wake-up call. But man, I would really hope that would be one. And again, still no proof, just more voiceover. And I'm also now picking up the real sad violin music in the background too. Mr. Krabs would be proud though, so I guess there's that.
Could walk and would rather me do that. Instead of her having to push someone my size up the jet bridge. All the other attendants wheeled their passengers up the jet bridge, but my needs were disregarded.
And again, that's a flight attendant, not a nurse, not an aide, not a home healthcare worker. And the thing about it is, in all those industries, there are weight limits. If you're going to transfer a patient or you're going to move somebody or push somebody that is above weight limits, you're going to need more than one worker. You may need multiple workers. So I gotta say, so far, I find myself on the side of the flight attendant. If this actually even happened.
This is discrimination. Nobody should be treated this way. Share your story at change.org/size travel.
Okay, yeah, now it's really just sounding like a vehicle for her to plug this petition. And then she goes and calls it discrimination. And yeah, I don't agree with that whatsoever. It's not discrimination. It's the consequences of her size. I mean, whether or not she likes that, that's the reality of things. And look, I know that there are conditions that make it easier for people to put on weight. I know there's medications that make it a lot easier for people to put on weight. I know that there's a lot of factors that play into weight. I really do. But I also understand for someone to reach her size, there's also lifestyle factors involved in this too. There are choices that are being made. And after a while, this becomes about the consequences of those choices. And I get it. We don't always like to have to deal with the consequences of the things that we've done. Believe me, there's plenty of things in my life that I would rather have not dealt with, but they're the consequences of my actions. And you do have to face them, and then you learn from them, and you grow, and you hopefully move on. I mean, the consequences of my actions led me to be 360 pounds. There were other factors that played into it as well, but a good portion of that was my own doing. And the thing about it being my own doing is then I could be a part of the undoing. It seems like she doesn't want to take the accountability for her actions and the consequences that come along with them. And so she's just trying to say that this is discrimination. I'm not buying it. I mean, especially knowing that that flight attendant could have potentially gotten seriously injured had they attempted that. So yeah, I'm just not buying it. They showed absolutely no proof of anything, just a voiceover and narration, and the source is, trust me, bro, where literally everything else is being filmed. Her sitting in the seat, her walking up and down the plane, all of these other things were filmed, but not the crucial moment. I mean, especially knowing that something like that could potentially go viral, and she's a content creator. Yeah, that just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. It just does not. So I gotta say, I just am not buying what she's selling. And to be honest, it all just felt like a shameless way for her to plug this petition that she's trying to push. So, but let's see what she has to say in this next TikTok. And I know this next one did go pretty viral last year, and many of you probably have already seen it, but I would like to share my insight on this as well.
I'm on a mission to revolutionize the travel industry and make it a more accessible, accepting, accommodating place for all. The needs of plus-size travelers matter just as much as anybody else, and today I'm going to cover what we are looking for in accessible, size-inclusive hotel amenities. Size-inclusive hotel amenities are crucial for ensuring that plus-size travelers feel welcomed, accommodated, and comfortable during their stay. We deserve an environment that respects our needs and body diversity. These are the exact steps that hotels can take to be more size-inclusive and accessible for travelers of all sizes. Number 1 on the list, provide sturdy, wider chairs without armrests in guest rooms, lobbies, and common areas to accommodate different body sizes and types.
All right, so now we are on to the chairs with arms debate. Yeah, I have a lot of feelings on this, I gotta say. So she wants chairs without arms in guest rooms, common areas, lobbies. So here's the thing. I wouldn't even care if she were advocating for some of those things, if there were options to have chairs without arms in those areas. But she's demanding chairs without arms in common areas and lobbies and in guest rooms. And here's the problem I have with that. There are plenty of times where I have actively needed arms on chairs or arms on the couch or some sort of support to get myself up out of a chair or off the couch. Look, it's not fun, it's not pretty, but it can be part of this condition, my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I have slipped discs in my back numerous times. I've slipped ribs numerous times. And when that happens, it's excruciating. And trying to get up out of a chair, trying to get up off the couch is incredibly difficult. And the only thing that saves me sometimes is the fact that there are arms on the chairs, that I have the arm on the couch to push off from, because otherwise I would not be able to get up in those moments. And I know I'm not alone in this. There are many disabled people, there are many elderly people that need that additional support that the arms provide. It's not just some place for you to set your arms while you're sitting there. It's also ways that people used to get in and out of the chairs, especially those of us that do have mobility issues. So I feel like she's only advocating for accessibility for plus size people. She's not thinking about accessibility in totality. She's not thinking of anyone else, but quite frankly, I think herself. And it's very apparent. And the sad thing is I've already witnessed this in my lifetime, where adding accessibility for one group may indirectly impact another group. So I know I mentioned it a few times on this channel before, but I was incredibly close with my grandpa on my mom's side, and he was blind. And in 1990 in America, they passed the Americans with Disability Act, or the ADA. And now 30 plus years later, I can definitely say it was a very crucial piece of legislation. There's been a lot of great changes that came out of it. But I must admit, there were some things that when it first came out were not fully thought through. One of the big things that the ADA pushed through that we can see everywhere now is wheelchair ramps and curb cutouts on sidewalks. And I gotta say, unfortunately, the curb cutouts proved to be a big issue for a lot of blind and visually impaired people at the time. So my grandpa had a guide dog, and I don't know if you're familiar with the process to get any sort of guide dog or medical service dog, but that process is an incredibly lengthy process. So the dogs themselves go through a minimum of 1 to 2 years of training before they ever get matched with anyone. So that already is a tremendous amount of work just to get this dog prepared to be matched with who they're going to be working with. And then after that, at the time, my grandpa had to travel over 2 hours away and stay for a month, without family, without friends, without anyone he knew, while he was matched with his guide dog, and then they worked together and learned each other in a controlled environment before my grandpa brought his guide dog out onto the street. So it's a process. And the thing about it is all of those guide dogs that were in service at that time were trained to stop at curbs. So any visually impaired or blind person like my grandpa who was using their dog to navigate as they had been trained to could no longer do it. And effectively overnight, my grandpa and many others in his position lost their independence, lost their mobility, and lost a small part of their freedom. And due to that, when you look at curb cutouts now, you'll always find tactile bumps right before the cutout. And I believe my grandpa could have taken his dog to go back through a retraining process, but he determined it was just going to be too difficult on him, so he was not able to do that. So I have already seen in my lifetime how when we are trying to provide accessibility to one group, it can even inadvertently take away accessibility to another. So if they start ripping arms of chairs out of everywhere, so I can only imagine how many of us who have mobility issues or are disabled or maybe elderly that might be affected by these changes. And she's not even thinking about that. She's only thinking about what she wants, not really thinking about what accessibility for everyone actually looks like.
Number 2 on the list, ensure beds with strong support and a higher weight capacity, along with providing reinforced chairs and wider bathroom facilities.
Okay, so she's got an issue with the bed, the chair, and the bathroom facilities. I mean, for most hotel rooms I've been in, that leaves pretty much the nightstand and the TV. That's the only thing she doesn't have a problem with. Oh, maybe the lamp. She might not have a problem with the lamp.
Do you really love the lamp, or are you just saying it because you saw it?
I love lamp. I love lamp.
But that's like pretty much your entire hotel room. Is your bed, that mysterious chair in the corner, and your bathroom. Like, that's it. Maybe you have a fancy hotel where you've got like a little seating area. But that's most standard hotel rooms. So she wants them to literally change everything about the hotel except the TV? Is that like, what? What?
Make elevators and hallways spacious to allow for easy movement of larger individuals and those utilizing mobility devices.
Okay, and that's already in place because of that Americans with Disabilities Act from 1990, as I already stated. And that was another thing that was put in place, that common areas have to be wheelchair accessible. So those things are already in place for people with mobility devices. And if you require that within your room, you can request an ADA room at pretty much any hotel out there. If it was built after 1990 or had any renovations done after 1990, you're going to find that they've got those accommodations. And believe me, as somebody who has been in and out of wheelchairs and has taken care of plenty of people who use wheelchairs, we've always learned to call ahead and make sure that these things are known and make sure that they have the accommodations we need before we get there. So that way there aren't any surprises. So I'm not really sure what more she is asking for because the ADA is already in place and that requires all of these things to be wheelchair compliant. So
Number 4, install grab bars in showers and near toilets. Offer a
And like I just said, she can get an ADA room. They already have these rooms that are accessible. You just have to request them. Now, I understand if maybe you're dealing with a historical hotel or maybe if you're outside of America, you're not going to run into that as much. But I mean, that is the roll of the dice when you're traveling, and it is up to you, the traveler, to figure out your accommodations, not to make sure that everyone else bends to you. I mean, these things already exist, and we don't necessarily need that in every single room. We can have options, just like the chairs. We can have chairs with arms and without arms. We don't have to just chuck all the chairs with arms because fat people can't fit in them. We can offer options, so that way we don't take away accessibility for other people too.
Adjustable handheld shower heads, and raised toilet seats for added accessibility. Number 5.
Okay, raised toilet seats don't always provide accessibility for everyone. They do if you need one, but they're not always going to provide accessibility for everyone. So putting these across the board for everyone, again, no, she can just request the ADA room.
Train staff to be respectful, understanding, and accommodating to travelers of all sizes. Number 6, provide pool lifts and handrails at the entry of the pool. This will allow for plus-size guests and guests with different abilities to enjoy all amenities.
Okay, but that's the thing. That's not a minor investment there. That's incredibly expensive. Like any type of lift like that is going to be incredibly expensive. So again, it doesn't feel like she's thought any of this through. It just sounds like this is the list of things that I want and they better do it. Not whether or not it's actually going to be good for everyone, not whether or not it's even actually going to be feasible for everyone or the hotels that she wants to go to just, I don't know, rip apart giant chunks of their infrastructure. It's very clear to me that she is not thinking any of this through except what she wants.
Number 7, hotel restaurants should have roomy seating options and sturdy chairs, ensuring that everybody can dine comfortably.
Okay, that's now like, what, the third time I think she's mentioned sturdy chairs? I mean, after a certain point, doesn't that become a self-report? If the biggest war that she is having is with furniture, again, is that not a wake-up call after a certain point? I mean, like, seriously, that is the third time she has mentioned chairs. She keeps mentioning reinforcing furniture and all of these things. So it really starts to sound like a self-report. I'm not saying she's broken a lot of furniture in her day, but I'm just saying that sounds like something that someone who has broken furniture in the past might say.
Number 8, offer larger beach and pool seating. Provide oversized.
Okay, now we got a fourth one with seating. And I don't know, again, maybe this is just me, but if I am having that big of a problem fitting into seating anywhere I go, at some point, isn't that a wake-up call? And I gotta say, if it's not, it really starts to make me question, at least for her, what would be. The fact that she doesn't fit into furniture isn't a wake-up call. And the fact that she can't walk a couple hundred feet without oxygen or feeling like she's gonna pass out. This is where I have an issue with all of this. I don't really believe that we need to be changing all of these things across the board. I don't have an issue with having options for certain things at all. I really don't. You want to have some chairs that don't have arms? Go for it. But you're going to take away all the chairs with arms? Now you're going to create accessibility issues for other groups of people that I know she's not thinking about. Then she wants all of this infrastructure and all of this furniture replaced at all of these hotels that she wants to go to. But she's not thinking about how that'll actually affect every other customer. Because I guarantee you none of these hotels, if they catered to all of her demands, would be doing this out of the kindness of their heart or their own pocketbooks. Of course not. They would take all of the cost of that and put it onto all of the rest of us consumers, thus making travel even more inaccessible for a lot of people. Because one of the biggest things that's going to stop people from traveling is money. That's the biggest thing right there. Money, whether or not it's the money for the actual fares and accommodations or the time off of work that they need to take in order to take the trip. That's going to be the number one thing that stops most people from traveling right there. And she's over here demanding all of these things out of hotels. That is going to cost so much money that I guarantee you is all going to be passed on to the consumer and thus making it more inaccessible for the rest of us. It's very clear she's only thinking about her own accessibility. She is not thinking about how this affects literally anybody else whatsoever.
Oversized loungers and seating at the beach and pool areas, allowing travelers of all sizes and abilities to be comfortable. Number 9, hotels should provide size-inclusive bathrobes. These should go up to a size 6X and beyond. And hotels should also provide bath sheets or plus-size friendly towels so that travelers of all sizes and abilities can use them comfortably.
Wow, she didn't have to call me poor like that. Dang, I guess I must be staying at the wrong hotels. Man, I think one time in my entire life of all the hotels I've stayed at, do I actually recall there being a bathrobe there for use at all. And I mean, I gotta say, when we first moved into this house, We had like a 3-week gap between our old house that we were living in and the time we were actually able to move in here, because there was no heat when we first moved in. There was a lot of things that were not working right. And so we couldn't really stay here at first. So we were staying at all sorts of different hotels. And after a while we were like, well, let's try this one for a night. Let's try this one for a night. Let's try that. And I never came across bathrobes. Like I said, maybe I'm just staying at the wrong hotels. Maybe I'm just really poor. I don't know. But one time in my life, I can recall there actually being a bathrobe available. I don't know. Maybe I'm just staying at the wrong hotels, because that has not really been an issue whatsoever, because they just didn't even offer bathrobes. So, and then as far as bath towels, here's the thing. Every hotel I've ever stayed at, you can ask for as many towels as you need. So, I mean, there's plenty of times where I'm like, yeah, I could use more than one of these towels, because let's be fair, they're a little thin. They're maybe not that big to begin with. But you can ask for like 30 of them. You really can. And I can understand why they don't necessarily want to stock 5 or 6 different size bath towels. If it's that big of a problem, she could bring these things on her vacation. She truly could. If this were such a problem for her personally, she could bring these things along with her, instead of demanding hotels make another capital investment on stuff that will again be pushed off to the consumer, making everything cost more for the rest of us.
And last but not least, this is an important one. Display clear and accurate information on these amenities on hotel websites. Include weight limits, seat dimensions, and things like that. And include information on the size-inclusive amenities available. This will help plus-size travelers make informed decisions. By implementing these size-inclusive hotel amenities, hotels can become more inclusive and accommodating. Be sure to hit that follow button for more.
Okay, yeah, we're not going to let her plug the rest of her petition. So that's the thing. The last one, I don't really have an issue with. They want to put information up on a website. I mean, yeah, we'll take a little work for the hotel to do, but then once it's up there, it's up there. So that one, have at it. And here's the thing. Some of this, I don't even have an issue with if she were to have said that she wanted options for these things. But she didn't. She's like, this is my list of demands. And it's very clear she did not think these demands all the way through, at least from my perspective, because I've already seen how when we try to give accessibility to one group, it can inadvertently take accessibility away from another. And going back to that example I gave earlier, even though we can look back now and say, yeah, curb cutouts have made a huge difference for anyone with accessibility issues, I will always remember that my grandpa was not so fortunate with that. And so I understand that there's a lot of nuance to these things, and that there are far-reaching consequences way beyond than I'm certain she is thinking about with her list of demands here. So let me know down below, what do you think? Do you think that that flight attendant was right, or should they have helped her? And what do you think of her list of demands for hotels for plus-size travelers? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious, and I love reading all of your responses. So as I mentioned earlier, I did compete in my first 5K for the season just last weekend. And I gotta say, on that 5K, I was like legitimately so shocked. I ended up coming in 3rd place for females in my age group, and I was not expecting to place whatsoever, because I do not run 5Ks. I walk 5Ks. I walk as fast as I can, and I always try to get a good time. But I was not expecting to place at all. And it was so funny because a buddy of mine was actually DJing that morning, and when I crossed the finish line, he came over and to congratulate me, tell me good job and stuff, and asked if I thought I was going to get a medal, and I was like, no, and just kind of laughed and walked away and got my bottle of water and was just waiting around for everything else. And when he started reading off the list of everybody who placed, gets down to my age bracket, gets to 3rd place, turns dead in the eyes and just like, Katie Bear, come on down. And I'm like, I was shocked. So fun times. So thank you for sticking around for the bonus story time, as well as our bonus pokey today. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye. Look at those beautiful eyes. Oh, you're so pretty. Look at this. She's gone to war with my Yoshis. Look who's here. Hey. Anybody else have a cat that does that? They're happy, they're purring, they're totally relaxed, and then they just want to chew on you?